Hi, this is Lori at Lori Creates. I'm here to share a journal, and this one is called Marty's Harvest. This journal is made for the mother of a friend. The mother's name is Marty, and Harvest because obviously all these gorgeous fall colors. So this is a small journal, small-ish journal. It is 7.5 by about 4 with about 1.5 inch spine. There's 2 signatures in it, and they're sewn in with a 5-hole pamphlet stitch using embroidery floss. The outside is this gorgeous upholstery fabric. It feels good too, and it's just gorgeous. And a variety of things in this journal have been used from reclaimed other items that turned into something else, and so I'll explain those as I go through. Starting with this embellishment in the front. It used to be a pair of earrings that I've turned into this fun embellishment. These were pieces from doilies or tablecloths that I've cut apart, and then the middle one has been dyed to match. And then this strip is from a table runner that has rips in it and holes and stains, and so I deconstructed it and have actually used pieces from that table runner throughout, and I'll point that out. But I think the cover comes together really beautifully. It is zigzag stitched around. There are raw edges here, and there's cardstock in between 2 layers of fabric. The journal is tied closed with this sari silk, and sari silk comes from India. After garments are constructed, there is an abundance of scrap fabric, and so that scrap fabric is ripped into strips and then tied or sewn together and sold. So we like using things that were going to be trash. There's the side view with all the fun things coming out, and the top view. So let's look inside. The inside is lined with, this is a vintage feed sack fabric that I have acquired and made that the lining. And then this is a plaid fabric made into a pocket, and that does run all the way through to the back. And then tucked in the front are a couple of little tags. I'm going to try to point out all the kind of reclaimed items in here. So this is a piece of dictionary paper. It's a piece of vintage lace, and it's backed onto some paper that can be written on. This tag has a piece of that sari ribbon. This does continue to shed, so just cut it off as it sheds. And then this is a piece of sheet music, vintage sheet music. And this brown plaid paper is from a bouquet of dried flowers that I bought years ago, and it was wrapped up as if it were a live bouquet. And it's really sturdy paper, and I've had a great time using it over the last couple of years. This first page is a paper bag folded in half and used as a page. And just has some embellishments on the front. Tucked inside is a feather encased in this acetate. And this acetate is from some packaging of some things that I purchased, and rather than throw it away, I like to use it in this way. It's tucked in that bag. There's 54 pages, I think, in this journal. This page here is from a vintage zip code reference book that was tucked away in my parents' basement desk. So I don't know exactly when it's from, maybe the 60s. But you'd look up your city and state, and then you could find the zip code. And then I've just paper clipped an envelope to that. This envelope has been pressure embossed on the flap, and then I put some gold gilding wax on that just to kind of bring it out. The other side is decorated with a die cut and some scraps. And then inside is a tag. This is vintage seam binding that I have dyed to match my color theme here. And just flips up. And then on the back, this is some vintage ledger paper, which I've used different kinds of ledger paper throughout, but that is quite old. Excuse me. It's early in the morning here, and my voice isn't awake yet. This page has this lace pocket on it. Is from an old cafe curtain that was in my parents' camper, so I've repurposed that. And the cluster that's on top of it includes some netting here, and I think this is from a bag of onions or a bag of potatoes that I got recently. There's a tag inside. It just uses a variety of modern material. This wraps around here, this cafe curtain, and there's a piece of vintage music paper underneath there. And then maybe Marty remembers these from back in the day. This was 1 cent stationery, and it was, legitimate postage at the time. And these worked where you wrote your letter on the inside, folded it up. There's some adhesive here on this flap. You'd seal it, address it, and mail it. I think that's kind of cool. I have a whole stash of these. Many of them are too brittle to fold. They crack, but that's one that actually folds. I don't think I would try mailing it, though. This is a book page from an Edith Holden book, a gardening book, and Marty's birthday's in September, so I use the September page. It also fits with the color theme. This is just a page that I did some stitching around. My husband laughs at me because I glue fabric and stitch paper, sort of the opposite. Here's the other side of that tuck spot. And this is a tag with a tiny scrap of vintage ribbon and some more sari silk. And then tucked behind that is a piece of piano roll paper and the words along the side, so you could sing along to it, and it reads from the bottom to the top. So this little snippet says, "Each petal in my dream bouquet." I think it's fun to use paper in a new way that was used by other people long ago for different purposes. Here's the other side of that cafe curtain with the tag. "Enjoy the shade of the trees." This is a found quote, and so books that are, falling apart and not suitable for reading anymore are often we'll go through and find snippets of phrases and use them, and so we call those found quotes, and so that is a found quote. And this is another piece of sari silk sewn on there. Here's the other side of the zip code paper. This it creates some texture here. It's called texture paste, and I put that on using a stencil. And a little embellishment here. This is made from a piece of cardstock. It's a half circle, and then just folded in a way that makes it look like a flower. On the edge here is a word token, and it says believe. Here is a portion of a vintage, I think it was like a cocktail napkin size napkin. It's the size of a hanky, but it's too thick to be a hanky. So I just took a corner of it. This is hand embroidery from someone long ago, and added it here and turned it into a pocket. This is a tag that has a flower fairy on it. It's a nasturtium fairy. And it's backed onto this piece. I think this is a mantle scarf, pretty old, vintage, probably not antique. And it's on an old flash card. I think that's fun. This is the other side of that paper bag with some lace. This pocket that it's tucked in is a Tibetan prayer flag. And then you can see, perhaps, that you can tell that's some birch bark. And this is actually from the bark from the tree in my front yard. And tucked in there is a piece of paper. This is a piece of ledger paper from back in the day. My father-in-law was an engineer at one of the automotive companies, and they kept notes in notebooks that are dated, the pages numbered, and then at the bottom there's a place to sign it. And all three, I cut that paper into 3 parts, and all 3 parts are in here in this journal, so I'll point them out as we get there. And this side is just, this gold fabric is from that table runner that was on the cover. And here's just a strip of the lining with some embossed handmade paper. It is a little flip spot. Inside that pocket is a tag. This is backed with some vintage ledger. And then inside is a collage. This is more of the fabric from the table runner. This is a very old book that was kind of a mechanical book, and I think it's written in German. And then this ratty looking thing here is the scrap from the binding of a book that it just adds some interesting texture. So fun to use all the parts. It's on a piece of vintage music paper that has a napkin decoupaged on the top. Here's part 2 of the journal page. It's page 3. And we move on. This covering of the second signature, or the second chunk of pages, is a book page from a gardening book. And again, I chose the September page. This is a tuck spot. This is a found quote that says possibility. This is a vintage seam binding that's been dyed to match. And a tag that has die cuts on it that have been heat embossed. That's why they're shiny. And some ledger paper. And it's backed onto some piece that wraps over is rice paper. This is an embellishment at the top of the next page. And here's the pocket. This is a vintage mother of pearl button with some vintage lace and probably modern rickrack. And it's just a place to write. Music paper, of course, vintage music paper. And this is just a little tag. Little things that dangle and move. This is a junk mail envelope that has, the window in it that I've collaged over the top of and stamped and turned into a pocket. And it's mounted on a book page. And in the pocket is a tag with some, again, heat embossed die cuts and vintage ledger paper on the back. This was a gardening book. I could tell now what it is. I'd forgotten. Here's a tag tucked in this pocket, and it has more vintage ledger paper on it. You could just accordion it out and write on it. This is a ruffle made from sari silk, and here's a charm that's a dragonfly. This is a tuck spot made by folding the top of the paper down, so it's an up tuck, which always makes me think of updo, a hairdo. Again, this is a scrap of fabric that's folded in, it's a half circle folded into a flower. And then this is tucked inside there. Piece of book page, and then this is another scrap from the table runner and vintage seam binding. This is a piece of packaging from an Amazon package that I put texture paste on. Tied together as the other one was with the brown embroidery floss. And is a tag. It's another found quote that says, "Believe in your ideas." And it's just tied with some twine. Vintage ledger on the back. This is a fun tuck spot here. It's on the other side of that gardening page. And it's made from an envelope. And you can see the writing here. And its postmark is from 1944. And it was going to a man in Chicago from, I think, somebody in Florida. This is a little item that's tucked in it, some sari silk and ledger paper. And this is actually, I think, a bulk mail stamp that arrived at my house sometime in the last few weeks. Tucked in there, this is from the table runner. The other side of the envelope is on this side of the page, and you can see here that it was the USO envelope from the war. And tucked in there is this little tag. This is scraps from seam binding and the table runner and the sari silk. This piece of paper here is a portion of a blueprint from my father-in-law's basement. And it's all on a piece of Italian straw paper. They use this for packing paper in Italy. It has a nice feel to it. And then there's just a couple of faux tickets tucked in there for fun. This is a little collage in the corner, and this is a piece of map paper, and I think it's from an atlas, and I think it's from Germany, based on the lettering. There's some vintage music paper again, and a tag tucked in there. This is a piece of ledger from France, and the date here is the 20th of May, 1941. It's just beautiful old handwriting. This embellishment is from a vintage pillowcase from my parents' home that I think it's, I'm not sure if it's Jacobean or Jacobean style, but I just cut out a leaf and used it as an embellishment with the word "believe" underneath. And then there's a little tag tucked in there with vintage ledger that can be written on. Coming to the end here, this is the back of the gardening book for September. And then in the back pocket is this tag with a scrap of ribbon and music paper. And this is the third of 3 pieces of that ledger where you would sign your work. So that is Marty's Harvest. I hope you enjoyed watching, and Marty, I hope that you love it. Take care. Bye.